a podcast about amazing people from an incredible state. Join Mike Broomhead for Amazing Arizonans, presented by Resolution Copper. Copper is essential to Arizona's economy and to America's future. Learn more at resolutioncopper.com.
Amazing Arizonans in another episode, just telling great Arizona stories. And this one is truly a rags to riches, overcoming success story that I think everyone needs to hear. He is the mayor of Peoria. His name is Jason Beck. And first of all, thanks for doing this. I know you're so busy.
No, absolutely. I love this. I mean, I think it's telling the story. I mean, just like for me, telling these stories are what's important because it hopefully motivates somebody else. Sharing stuff like this. I've watched the podcast many times, so you hear little pieces that you can actually pick up from other people, and it adds value to everybody. So, well, being at your facility, you own a company called KTAR Tactical. For people that don't know, you can look it up. I come from a law enforcement military family. Lost a brother in Iraq who was a Bradley commander, so obviously in an armored vehicle. My surviving brother, just crossed over 26 years with the sheriff's department in my hometown. That's awesome. So public safety has a big, I have just a heart for these public servants. You have a company that protects them. And I have such respect for what you do. Being at your building and seeing that state-of-the-art facility, meeting your employees. I was at your building for a political event and talked to a couple. You got twin brothers that work. Twin sons, yeah.
And they're
on fire. So I've got 6 boys all together.
And these are your boys.
They're my sons. I've got 6 sons all together. My 2 oldest, one his name's Ronan, who's recently married about a year ago, and I've got my first grandbaby on the way by him, so grandson. So we like to have as many boys as possible in our family, it seems like. Ronan runs the hard armor facility side, so all the ballistic presses and stuff like that, the building you were in. And then on the soft goods side, Gavin, who's Ronan's twin brother, works directly underneath me, and we design product every day. So we before I came here, we were working on product this morning for the Danish military as well as some of our federal agencies. So
when you talk with them, they are such ambassadors for what you do. And everybody that I've met that's worked for you is just kind of an ambassador for doing good in the community. It just is always cool to see people that are it's not just a job for them. No, it
is definitely a lifestyle. I mean, it's the way that I've tried to drive the business, and I've not been perfect at it. 26 years. Hopefully, you get better over time as you develop, just like an artist would or anything else like that. I didn't get into this business and all of a sudden become the perfect manager, nor am I the perfect manager now. I think you grow over your period of time. I mean, I started in this business when I was 26 years old. So, as you develop your skill set, I think you realize that the importance of people and culture. Culture for me is a big aspect. For me, it's what's interesting is I've had people even in my political side tell us like, well, not everything can be perfect. In my business, everything has to be perfect because your brother, who's a sheriff's deputy, your brother that you lost in Iraq, to me, once I touch a customer, I was just in Denmark 2 weeks ago and I had the same conversation with the commanding general of Danish forces, and his son wears my vest. He wore my vest. So all these different soldiers in Denmark, as an example, and he goes, what drives you so much and what drives your sons? Because he's met Ronan and Gavin as well. And my wife works at the business. For me, the art of perfection, it is an innovator die mentality. That's our trademark. You have to innovate constantly, thinking about how that soldier, that young man, that could be my son. It could be your son. It could be your brother. The fact that we need perfection when it comes to our ballistic work shouldn't be a question. It should be expected. Right. And so that's how we run the business. But because we build that into the culture of every single thing that we design, it just drives through all the way through from everywhere, from the person that receives the product to the person at the front desk to the person that ships the product. So
I want to get to the beginning of your company, but I would be remiss if we don't talk about your beginning, if you don't mind. Please. Because I do a lot of things, volunteering and focus on the foster care system, because I just think it's a group of people that are already starting behind the curve. And then they graduate out of the foster program, and so many of them move into what we call adulthood, but they're unprepared for the success of what's down the road. And I know I'm preaching to the choir talking to you about it.
Yeah, to some degree, yeah.
But you are a product of foster care. Yeah. What was different about your experience, and what needs to happen, if you don't mind sharing that experience, and what needs to happen so that there are more success stories like yours out of that program?
So I think part of it, So I had a very, very rough upbringing, but it goes back to the history of my mother. My mother was her so I would be remiss if I didn't share her story briefly as well, and how it carries forward. So my mother was, had passed away 14 years ago now, 15 years ago. Her mother had passed away when she was 8, and her father, unfortunately, her father and her uncle had sexually abused her until she was age 16. She got married at age 17, and then she married a much older man that kind of saved her or rescued her. She had my brother and sister, who this gentleman, his name was Narvel, was an amazing man. I never met him. Obviously, he'd passed away far before I came around, and then he passed away. And that hurt my mom so deeply, because this was like the true lover of her life, her savior, if you will. And then come to find out down the road, she dated a man. She was for Bell Telephone, so plug and play telephone operator. My mom was much older, and she had thought that she could not have children. So she was 42 years old when she had me. When she was 41, she met this gentleman over the phone and ended up having a relationship with him, and come to find out he was a railroad engineer, and later on found out that he was married and had kids, and she had this entire relationship with him while he was on the road, and didn't realize that all this was going on, and she was heartbroken. So every man that she had ever experienced had hurt her. Right now, you don't realize that as a kid. No. I didn't realize this until I was an adult, right? And it took a long time to kind of heal from that from a personal level, but it also that was kind of something that she never really shared. It was the stories that from families that kind of put that together. But when you start to dig into that, that's why pain is passed from child to child, right? It's passed from family to family, and parent to child, and so on and so forth. So whenever I was younger, my first real significant incident with my mom of kind of abuse was really in 2nd and 3rd grade and 4th grade, that time frame. And I was taken away from my mom. So over the period of time, I was away from my mom for about 8 years growing up as a kid, in and out of the foster care system. I'm going to go back to something you said in the beginning, that's like everybody has a different experience, right? And how can we do it differently? I think the way that we should do it differently is we should look at it as our superpower and not as a crutch. And it means that the people that are actually in the foster care system, we need to look at children as how we're actually going to empower them and how we're going to drive them forward. You ain't going to do anything differently to me than it was already been done to me, as in my example. So people ask me all the time, how would I achieve something? What's my other option? Right. So for me, it was like it's me having ADD as an example. My ADD, I always looked as my secret weapon. I can design better than anybody else. I was able to challenge that, but it was because of people that were around me. Luckily, I had different families, like the O'Reilly Automotive family that came from Springfield, Missouri, that actually helped pay for me to go to a private Catholic school in high school. And by doing that, it allowed me to be able to see something else that was supposedly better than me, or supposedly had more money than me, or whatever. But I was more innovative. I was more creative. I was more capable of driving harder. If I wanted something, I would go mow a yard. If I wanted to buy a fishing pole, I'd go mow a yard. So I would outwork anybody else. I still do, for that matter. It's like if somebody wants to beat me, then they need to beat me, right? It needs to be a fair up fight from beating me when it comes to business or creativity or design or whatever. So for me, it was always, how do I add additional tools? And I had a priest, I mentioned it earlier in another conversation. I had a priest, the same gentleman that actually buried my mom, was the same guy that actually was my introduction into the foster care system. At the time, whatever church, Greene County, Missouri, not Missouri, so way down south, right? Greene County would actually place you with a foster care family that was from the church family that you actually, which makes total sense if you think about it, right? Because now you have interaction with not only your religious self and other beings or people that are actually going to church with or school with or what have you, but they also have the same belief system. But what it does, it also gives you kind of a centering point to lean on somebody else in the future. And for me, growing up Catholic, it was a blessing and a curse later on, because you always have that Catholic guilt that you carry. But I say that jokingly. But it.
I was raised Catholic.
Oh yeah, you know the feeling. You know the feeling.
I got the joke.
You know the feeling. And so for me, it was the blessing of it was that I had such good large families around me that I could see what the art of the possible was for me, right? I would see families like the Meeks family or the O'Reilly family, and you would see these families and you're like, man, I want a family like that. I want to have 4 or 5 or 6 kids. I want to be able to sit down at the table and have dinner with my family someday like that. So that art of the possible was what allowed me to have that drive to go, how do I get that? How do I achieve that?
But what is it? My experience was much different than yours, and there were similar when you're talking in different ways. My father has passed away now over 10 years ago. My parents were married until I was 14, but my father was drunk every day of my life.
Yeah.
And it was not a good relationship. Right. There was a long time in my adult life I didn't get along with my father at all. But my grandfather, my mother's father, was the mentor to me. I made a choice later in life that instead of focusing on what I didn't have, I focused on what I did have. But sometimes I think it was a choice I made. Was it a choice you made to look at the world that way, where so many other people, it looks as if they're looking at the world at what they don't have or the bad things that have happened to them? That's
an interesting thing. I mean, just much like your relationship with your father, my forgiveness for my mom didn't really come until the day of her funeral. I literally went to her funeral, listened to 2 of the speakers go up and speak, and the priest had asked me, again, the same priest that had buried my mom, is the one that introduced me into the foster care system, said, "Hey, are you going to say anything?" And I'm like, "What am I supposed to say?" I still had this tint of like almost, I don't want to say hatred, but like unforgiveness is really what it was, right? I hadn't forgiven her at that point. And then I listened to these 2 women speak, and I'm like, they don't get it. That's not my mom. Like, and all these people that were in the assisted living were there at the same time that this was going on. And so he's getting ready to give the rest of the eulogy. And I stand up and I'm like, my wife's like, "Oh no, what are you getting ready to say?" And I got up and I'm like, I go, we all know how hard of a hard ass Barbara Beck was, right? And everybody in the room started laughing. And that was the whole point, is like, she had that, but at that moment I realized that I need to forgive her, right? I realized who she was, and people need to understand who she really was, because that's what made me great, right? And when I say that, my choice was this, and I give you a brief example that's a sad example, but at the same time it was life-changing for me at this moment. I ran my mouth when I was a junior in high school off to my mom, just like every junior in high school does. I've got a junior right now. Half the time I want to hug him and kiss on him, and the other time I want to put him in the dirt, right? And he knows I love him to death, but he's a junior in high school. That's what he's supposed to do, right? Yep. He's supposed to drive his parents crazy. So I made this comment to my mom, and basically saying something like, well, I should have gone and lived with my dad. Trying to hurt her, just like every idiot kid does during this period of time. And but it was harsh, and it was too harsh for her, and I didn't realize how much it cut. And she brings out this tin. She had this sewing tin that had like this Betsy Ross thing on the front of it, and she pulls this out, and she's got letters. Now, this is a tin from literally like 40 years, right, of all of her sewing stuff. And she pulls these letters out, and the top letter is a letter from my dad to her, asking for her to go get the problem fixed. Right. This is before I'm born. Yeah. Right. And she's like, that's what the choice that he wanted you to make. Right. And it set the tone for my life that I'm like, even though I despised our relationship at that point, I realized that she was the one person that actually had my back no matter what. Right. Mm-hmm. She would go through whatever it took, whatever pain it was to do that. So I went and walked. I left the house. I walked. I was this upset kid. And I walked, and I was like, I'm never going to let anybody hurt me or put this on me ever again. I'm going to work harder than everybody else. I'm going to drive this forward. And I wasn't a great student. So my mom would work nights. We hot swap beds. We had a 1-bedroom apartment. And so if I wasn't out of that bed by 6 o'clock, she was pulling me out of that bed by 6 o'clock. So it was this mentality where I was just constantly working, but I didn't have a strong educational thought process. She didn't care if I went to school. She cared if I worked harder than everybody else, and that I was more creative than everybody else. And I think this moment of like, okay, she's got my back. She is who she is. That's who I'm the same person. I am exactly how she is. I'm going to outwork everybody else, and I'm going to make it. I'm not going to let somebody hold me down. And that was literally the one moment. I mean, I can pick it. I can see it. I almost smell it. It was, humid, spring, whenever this was going on, and I'm sweating, and she's having this conversation with me. And I just couldn't believe that that's how some man, right? Because I can't call him my dad, right? Because he's never my father. Some man would actually look at who I was or that I wasn't. And it made me want to go make something of myself. It made me want to make everybody that ever thought that I wasn't going to be enough, or maybe even make him feel like, hey, you lost out, right? And so I drove forward, right? And I didn't do everything perfect. I would, I went from there to college was not for me. I went to a semester of college and then ended up in the United States Marine Corps. Went from the Marine Corps to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Academy. It really did, war was over with already by the time. Gulf War was already over with by the time I got in. And
when did you go in? What years?
92. So I landed on the footsteps in February 14th, Valentine's Day on 1992. So went in and then from there ended up at the Gracie Academy. In Torrance, California, worked for the Gracie family. The UFC had just started, so I ended up right in the midst of all this. Was an assistant instructor there for many years, and then went to work on a government contract over here in Arizona. That's how I ended up over here, working down in Marana and working around that area, if you will, and different government programs, and did anything and everything that they wanted me to do, to travel or go teach classes. And then as a necessity, as I was teaching classes, stuff would get ripped off of my vest, and I started designing product for myself, and it went from there. And so my, I started a business. I was married at the time. I just had Ronan and Gavin, and in my first marriage, and I was driven. I was driven like nobody's business. I just had these two kids, and I wanted to go do whatever I could. I didn't really need sleep. I just needed work. And it's probably the downfall of part of my first marriage is because I worked constantly. I didn't really know how to be a husband. I'd only seen examples, but I didn't know the example. And it took me many years to actually figure out what kind of husband I wanted to be, that work wasn't just all it. For me, my thought process, going back to that moment with my mom and that letter, that drive overtook everything else in my life. The drive of driving for success, being creative, outworking everybody else. And what ended up happening is it took many, many years for me to figure out that I needed to actually be a person for somebody else. I had to be there for somebody else. I had to be there in the relationship. And it was the downfall of my first marriage. So.
It's interesting you say that, because I would have never guessed that.
Yeah.
Because I've heard you speak a number of occasions for different reasons, either on the MC at an event or there's something. I've never heard you speak in public where you haven't spoken about your family.
They're the main thing I've ever thought about.
And that's always the impression I've gotten.
But see, that doesn't mean that it wasn't my priority. My priority was the view of me was
taking care of them.
My only skill set was driving forward to take care of my family, right? So we don't really, unless we actually add tools to our tool chest as men, we don't really know how to actually be a better husband, a better father. For me, I got challenged by a friend of mine. It's a crazy story. I get chills thinking about this because of the moment was I had a friend of mine named Todd, former professional football player, invited me to CCV. And I'd gone there a couple of times, and then all of a sudden, this guy Todd was like, "You need to see this sermon," and the sermon was this cheesy Kirk Cameron show called Fireproof. It sounds crazy. I mean, I've talked about it a few times. And when you watch it now, you're like, I cannot believe that's what changed your life.
Yeah.
And I watched this sermon and I listened to the pastor, and it was going in and out of the movie and then talking about the different aspects of the sermon. And for me, it was like, man, I'm not paying attention to actually what the main thing is, right? I'm doing more, and I'm thinking that I should outwork and things like that. So I wasn't there for my ex-wife. I wasn't there for her in the aspect of being able to, I was there as a financial provider, but I wasn't there as an emotional provider.
And the tough thing is that, because I'm exactly like you are.
Yeah.
And that's how I grew up. You work harder than everybody else. I barely have a high school diploma, but it's a noble.
Sounds like we might have gone to the same school.
I'm telling you, I had my dean of students actually said to me, Mike, high school's not for everyone. Yeah. I mean, I got that. That's an honest talk.
I graduated 51 out of 51.
Okay.
So yeah.
But it's a noble attribute to work hard.
Yeah.
My grandfather preached it. My grandfather was a retired auto mechanic. I wanted to emulate him. He could fix anything. He could build anything. So you're right. What can be a noble thing can still be your downfall.
Totally. And it obviously I found financial success and all these other things. For me, I'll give insight on it. I mean, I decided I was going to make a giant change for myself. This was 2007. I started going to church every Sunday, taking my kids to church every Sunday, participating in sports programs, doing those types of things. And it still wasn't perfect. It's not your job to be perfect. Our job is just to be the best we can in each moment. And it took me a number of years to really try to improve my style of person, of who I could become, right? Because the best version, my wife Jane, who and I we just celebrated 14 years of marriage, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was incredible. We have 4 more kids, and it's been an absolute blessing. All boys, so we kept trying to have girls, and that's the way it works. But it has been an absolute blessing to all of our sons. All 6 of the boys have great lives. They're one's married and has a baby on the way. One's engaged and has a fantastic young lady that he's engaged to, and she's just an amazing young lady. I mean, our sons are picking, I would say, the right partners.
But isn't that the way it's supposed to be? Is if you
pray for that,
but if you're the one that breaks the cycle, and not to interrupt your story, but with my father, I ended up forgiving him before he passed away, but not long before he passed away. But I had to forgive him more for me at that time, and I felt sorry for him, and it was genuine forgiveness that he had a life I didn't know anything about. He was adopted, and he had his own set of challenges. But if I didn't forgive him, how could I ever expect to be forgiven by anybody I've ever hurt? And I've hurt a lot of people.
I would tell you that's a very common story, especially with men. We hold on to all this, whether it's pain or things that are inflicted on us or things that we think are inflicted on us, and we don't really understand the aspects of what happened to our parents. When my mom passed away, it took me probably another year. So I'm going to church during this whole period of time, but it took me another year before I would say that I went like literally all in, right? I started working at Streetlight and volunteering at Streetlight and joined the board of Streetlight, and that gave me a whole different perspective of trying to give of myself to other things. Those that don't know anything about Streetlight's an amazing organization that we take girls that are trafficked off the street and give them a place, and not only just a place to stay, but really try to change their lives. And it was amazing for me to actually experience that, because I was able to serve for not a financial reason. And that was a big deal for me.
Right.
Because I'd always driven for I'm going to be more successful. I'm going to do this. And I realized that I needed to use the skill set that God gave me to actually do something greater than. Right. And I think that as men, we don't tell the stories of our, whether it's our pain or our mistakes to our kids. So when we don't share that, because we're supposed to be machismo, we're supposed to show all these other pieces. My strengths come from my weaknesses, right?
I was going to say imperfection, though, is seen as weakness.
Absolutely. Like everybody looks at that and says, show me a man on this planet that has not made a mistake in their life, right?
Well, they hung him on a cross.
Yeah, I mean
that's the only one.
That's the only one, right? I mean, you look at it, but as we sit today. The fact that we don't share all those mistakes, we learn from those mistakes. So in our family, we literally call it after actions. I don't care if it's a council meeting or a solicitation that we're actually doing from a government solicitation, trying to bid on something, or something that I see on the factory floor, because you've seen my factory. I mean, most people would say they'd eat off wouldn't suggest that, but it is that clean. But it
looks brand new every time I go.
We try. I mean, because I believe that the environment that you're in, that you inspect what you expect, right? If you need to learn from those lessons that you've made mistakes on, and then what we do is we gather people, we share those mistakes, and then they learn from that, and that builds a culture of not necessarily perfection, but it builds. I mean, when it comes to armor, absolutely, but when you're sharing that with your family, it builds a culture of of problem solving. How do we actually look at the mistakes that we've made?
Well, go and look at public safety and what they do in every tragic situation that happens.
After
they go back and watch the video and they debrief and they say, what can we have done better? If it turns out very good, what do we do right? But you're right. If you don't go back and look at those things, you're missing something big.
But we as men don't do that, right? Yeah. We as men, we as families, we as parents, we think that we're gonna, I'll see parents do this from coaching standpoint, and they're like, you did this wrong. Well, if you change that conversation, hey, if you thought that let's look at where we could improve, and then take that and go down that path. And I think that's how I tried to utilize myself as a improvement tool to try to go, how do I improve my family? How do I share my mistakes? I've shared, even with my older boys, I've shared my mistakes with my older sons, with their mother. And the reason for that is because I don't want them to have a bad relationship with my ex-wife. I want them to have a great relationship with my ex-wife. I've never understood parents that hate on their other spouse. Yeah. It's like, you were married for a reason, you loved for a reason, you created these two amazing kids. Don't you want them to have that? Like that's how I look at it. Now, when you're in the midst of a divorce, that's not always the case. But, for me, I've really wanted and still want those types of relationships to transpire. And I think that the more you share with those family members, the better off we all are, because that cuts the tie. It cuts the negative tie to where they can have great relationships. And I'm seeing it in my two older boys. I mean, the young ladies that they've picked for their lives, or maybe it's the reverse. Maybe those young ladies have picked them for their lives. They have chosen fantastic spouses that really lift them up and honor each other instead of one honoring the other. I mean, they really, and I think that's a really important aspect of relationship.
The best advice I got, and it was way late in life because I've divorced like you are, but someone said, write down a list of the non-negotiables in the person you want.
Totally.
And then become the person that is worthy of that person when you find them. And the idea of you have to be worthy of that person.
Yeah.
Are you working on yourself as much as you have the expectation of that other person? Are you worthy of that person if they come along?
Yeah. It's interesting because I if you look at that, like I work daily with my wife. And it's funny because I've had everybody from the FBI because we do all the federal body armor, FBI, DEA, ICE, U.S. Marshals, Secret Service, about half the Secret Service. And then we do all these foreign countries, and including U.S. military. And we'll have these really high-level officials, even J.D. Vance, when J.D. was host, we hosted J.D. at our facility. All of them asked the same question, like, wait, you two work together? It's weird for me not to work with my wife. Like we have such an amazing relationship because she lifts me up and I lift her up. We have this just incredible mixture. She gets to tell me what to do on solicitations and I get to go design it. And then I'm trying to I feel like I'm not just trying to please the customer. I'm trying to please my wife at the same time. And because that's our family business, it has been, it's just been, I've never seen anybody have a couple or husband and wife work like we and the two of us do. And it's just a really, really special relationship. Like it's pretty amazing. Like I say she's far more competitive than I am. I really do think she is. She would say she's not, but she really is. Anybody that knows her, and my wife Jane, she just crushes it. Like she's one of those things where if we lose something, she'll be like, "How did we lose this?" And she'll go through an entire after action piece. So I have found a spouse that not only lifts me up and makes me a better person, it also I hope I do the same with her. And that's how we've built such a great business. I mean, we started TIER in 2010, and it has just been this really dynamic. I mean, we'll do over $130 million in sales this year, and international.
What was the break for your business? Because you joked earlier about 26 years to be an overnight success. Yeah, that's a big story for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is.
When was it for you that you realized I have something that everybody else now sees that I have?
I think that, so I have, the joke in the industry is I'm like the soup Nazi of the industry, right? It's, if you remember that Seinfeld episode,
no soup for you.
Yeah. I'm literally like, if I go to Denmark, like they expect me to tell them what they should do next. Because my job is to design the best in the world. So I've built a reputation ballistically, from everybody from the FBI standard to the current NIJ standard, National Institute of Justice standard. I mean, they follow what I've done. And I am at 53 years old, don't even feel like I'm even close to being done. Like I actually feel like I'm not to that cap yet. Like, and it's really cool because I get to pour into all these young kids. I've got 4 really great engineers, young engineers that graduate all from local colleges, whether it's NAU or ASU or GCU. And these kids have grown up inside TIER, working in TIER while they're going to college. and I get to pour into them on a daily basis. I really enjoy that aspect of it because I'm like challenging them and growing them. And I know their dads too, which makes it even cooler to do that. I've got my own sons that work there. And then I've got some really just amazing employees that I get to pour into. I could tell you 100 stories. I could tell you 1,000 probably, but I've got, out of the 540 plus employees, over 300 of them are refugees from some foreign country. 17 of them are from Afghanistan, Afghani refugees, Malaysians, Cambodians. I mean, it's an incredible environment. And we've really tried to build, like I would tell you, if you have an opportunity to come to Tier Tactical, I don't even care if you're a customer. I don't even care if it's just, like, you should come for sure, but just anybody and everybody, if you came at Christmas time, these two have seen it. Christmas time is probably the most spectacular moment because you have these people from all these different nationalities, and I started this in 2010. I wanted every single team, I gave every team a $50 gift card, and I want you to decorate your team. Sounds crazy. Half the team at the time were Muslim, right? And I didn't really think about it like, okay, we're celebrating Christian holiday, and I'm trying to get them to all celebrate Christmas. Right. It wasn't like in my mindset of like, hey, I'm trying to get people to actually, but it just turned into this just amazing environment. And now it is like Thanksgiving hits, and the day after Thanksgiving is like Christmas explodes, and then it just keeps building and building, and it lasts for 25, 30 days until the Christmas break. And it just turns into this great, amazing culture. And I've had customers walk in and they're like, how do you guys get are you guys more productive in December than how you can't be like working harder? Our productivity goes up when employees are happier, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll give you an example. COVID hits. We hired an ER doctor that was at St. Joe's full-time. We have a medical clinic in our facility. He's still there today. He checks on patients every single day. He's a contract employee. His job is to have a medical clinic. I lost an employee. The background is I lost an employee that had an aneurysm right before COVID. Her name is Luce. She was an amazing individual. Had worked for me for both companies, my previous company and this company. I'd sold my previous company during my divorce or before my divorce, and then exited in 2008 as CEO. And I had to take 2 years off. Well, during that period of time, I'm consulting and doing stuff. Well, Luce worked for me almost this entire time. Just this amazing, amazing lady, and would pour into everybody, make birthday cakes for everybody. And she came back from a flight and had an aneurysm. Well, she had thought she had just a headache, so she takes Tylenol in medical clinic or medical closet, and ends up passing away, unfortunately. Really, really tragic, and just changed my perspective of I need to do better. Right now, I'm not a doctor. I couldn't have fixed this, but if we had somebody there, that could have made a difference. So when COVID started to hit, I'm like, I just went into action. We need to hire a doctor. We hired a doctor. We had a PA that would go around, and if you were sick, we would come to your house, test you, give you IV therapy if you wanted to. We were delivering meals to people's houses to make sure they were taken care of that way. We didn't skip a beat. And the reason why is because the base of Tier is the culture of Tier, which are the people, right? I can design the greatest product in the world, but if that person doesn't care enough to actually put the sewing and time in, then that's our kids. That's our brothers and sisters that are wearing that equipment. And I get chills talking about it. For me, that is the most important part. It's not, our customer's not our most important asset. It's not. I mean, FBI, love them to death. They're not our most important asset. It's the people that are actually the ones that are on the sewing machine. And I just have this really deep love and passion for the people that are trying to make something better. I mean, you see them put their kids through college and doing all these great things, and they're working their butts off. And I'll have what's crazy now being in the political space. I'll have people go like, "Oh, you run slave labor. Come to Tier Tactical and see how that works." You come into Tier, I've got sewers that are in there making $30 an hour, and health benefits and a full-time doctor, and 2 weeks off paid. We take off 2 weeks a year that's paid, plus they've got their PTO time. I mean, I try to I had somebody make a comment like, well, you guys should unionize. I'm like, when the union thinks they can do a better job than I take care of my employees, they're welcome to come in and have a conversation. Now, I care so much about them that's what changes our ability to be able to make such a great product. Because without, I can be the greatest designer in the world, but without them, I'm nothing. So,
at the risk of embarrassing you, I want to talk about philanthropy.
Okay.
Because I've been at some events, And I've seen some of the auction bids.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, we were at the 100 Club a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of different auctions you won that were significant in price to a lot of people. And I know they're significant to you too.
Yeah.
But where does it come from for you to, because I know, I mean, I don't know you very well, but what I've seen of you and the places I've seen you, you are very philanthropic, and there is an element of giving to the right things for you. Where does that come from, and what does it mean?
So, you know, I remember, I mean, it's going to sound, I mean, maybe it sounds cheesy, but I remember being 5 years old and my mom having a Caprice Classic, you know, this giant car, no seat belts at the time, by the way.
I used to stand on the seat next to my grandfather.
I used to lay down and sleep in the back window.
In the back window, yeah.
Know? I mean, it's crazy. You know, you think about that. And my mom would beg at Kmart for toys or for money. And man, that's an emotional thought process. And I think that those are the things. Those are the things that we're supposed to pay back at, right? So I think a lot of people will look at somebody begging on a corner or asking for help or trying to. Sometimes it's just, how do you help that person out? Like I think we and I'll get to what you're asking here in a second, but I think a lot of times we feel as human beings that person is lesser than. That's me. That's my story, right? That's my mom's story. And you don't know who the diamond is. That really is the key. Is, you know, I think that you know, walking across Israel like I have. I mean, I've walked Israel 6 different times. Obviously, I went after October 7th, as you know, a couple days afterwards, but I think that you start to see people all over the world, and you start to see that, and you go, how my job now as a 53-year-old man is, if I can improve other people's lives, I get fulfillment from that. Like, and that's my mission at TIR.
Legacy.
Now, it absolutely is. Like I tell this story all the time, and I'll go back to what you're talking about. But I recently just told it last week. There was a gentleman that I'm really, really close with. I've walked Israel with him a number of times. His name's Larry Fraley. It's like my adopted dad. I love this man more than any man that I've ever had in my life. And I've walked Israel with him. I say 6 times, but I actually went with him a 7th time. He went with me after October 7th. Like, he told me he had to go with me, and I'm like, I can't protect you. And he's like, I got to go with you. If you're going, I'm going. He's 75 years old, right? I mean, this total badass. Honestly, I was just super impressed, and we just had this amazing experience together, good and bad, after that event. But but we've walked it many times. And his father passed away during COVID, and Ashley Woolridge, the main pastor of CCV, gets up and talks about how if this man that's being buried had not done the things that he did, he would not have influenced Larry's helping start CCV. He was one of the founding members of CCV. In fact, I actually think it started in his living room, right, with Don Wilson and all this other stuff, and it started in his living room. And you look at that, and it's like, I remember my wife and I walked back to the car, and it sounds cheesy, but we're walking back to the car, and we're looking at each other, and we're both teary-eyed, and she's like, how did that impact you? I'm like, I want to be that guy. Yeah, I want to be the guy. Like, the thing I need to look for is, I want to be the guy that actually influences my son so greatly that the great things that they do, or that Austin and Tyler do, or the engineers that work for me all the young men that are in my life, how do I influence them so much that they do such an amazing thing, and I'm just the catalyst for that next step, right? So I go back to that 5-year-old story. For me, I look at how you pour into other people. How do you actually make a difference in other people? How do you pour into organizations?
And you never know the results of it either.
No, you really
which is
don't.
Amazing sometimes, that what people remember and what they'll take with them, what you glean from someone doing something for you.
Sometimes it's just
as a little boy.
Sometimes it's just a moment. Yeah. Sometimes it's taking somebody. I had a gentleman that lived down the street that offered to take me fishing when I was 6 years old, and took me and 2 other kids fishing on the street. Took us all fishing. I love fishing. Right. Like those moments, you don't know what that's going to impact somebody else. That was my escape from all the abuse and everything else like that, was fishing and hunting. That was how I escaped. So my point is that you don't know what you're going to do for somebody else. Things like when I became mayor, the most impactful thing that I got to do, and it's interesting because people are like, driving great economic development, which we have. I mean, we've done the biggest deals in the state, or some of the biggest deals in the state. We've given a roadmap for every single city with this new state land deal that's going to change everything, potentially at least $1.5 billion to $3 billion for state education, like amazing things. For me, the biggest thing is, it's going to sound crazy, is the Mayor's Day of Giving. So there was this event called the Day of Giving that had been going on for a number of years. We had participated in it, my wife and I, just from Tier Tactical, and participating in it because we really believe, like, how do you pour into the local community? It's not like we were like, hey, look at us. It had nothing to do with that, right? Same thing for the Mayor's Day of Giving. My wife and I, my problem is, and these guys have seen it, they're in the room, I like to shop for kids. So I go into Walmart this last year. I started doing this 3 years ago, at this level. And we're like, hey, we're going to make this. We're going to make the main sponsor. We had raised, before then, I think, 25, maybe not even $20,000. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll match whatever you guys raise. That was first year. Second year was like, okay, we'll double it. We'll do $50,000, right? And when I say that, I walk in and I get to go shopping, right? I take my kids in, and the best compliment from anybody that I could ever have from any of my kids or anybody else was my 7-year-old this last year walking in and just shopping for all, because he had experienced it twice now. Walking in and buying toys and never asking for a single toy for himself. Yeah. That to me was the most impactful thing is, hey, we can spend all this money. That's great. How are you going to impact these other kids?
Right.
Like, how are you giving to other children? And it was meaningful. And we're going to do the same thing again this year. We're hoping to raise over, I think this last year we raised over $100,000, including what we put in. We put a significant amount in. But I kept going back. Like, I bought every bike out of 2 Walmarts, I think, or something. We had like a 53-foot tractor trailer truck. And
watch Shaquille O'Neal do that stuff.
It's how it's supposed to be. It's like, I have been very blessed with our business. When you talk about the 100
But you were
Club
doing
piece,
stuff like that before money wasn't a concern.
Yeah, true. Because I think that I'm not. So I'm going to preface this before I say this. I am not a scalpel when it comes to church. I'm not the guy that's going to quote scripture and do all this other stuff. I am a hammer for Christ, not a scalpel. I say that all the time. So when I say this, I don't mean this to be preachy, because I'm not that guy, right? I'm literally the opposite of that guy. Typically, I would make, that's just not who I am, right? From the hammer perspective, I believe that God put us on this earth to truly try to do good, as much good as we can for other people. It's what I've tried to do for the longest period of time. Not always perfectly, but it makes a difference, because I think you get far more fulfillment for yourself by doing for others and not trying to take the credit for it, right? If you're trying to take the credit for it, then what ends up happening is not as meaningful.
No,
it's honestly, it sounds crazy. It's people ask me all the time, like, why is it that you're not taking a paycheck?
Don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing.
But they ask, why don't I take a paycheck from the city, right? Because this is the purest thing. I was doing security at CCV and serving, and it was fantastic. I really felt like I was giving in myself. But then I went and met with David Green. Ashley Woolridge, the main pastor of CCV, and I met with David Green. This was about a year before the election, before I even decided to run. And David Green's the owner of Hobby Lobby, CEO of Hobby Lobby. Mm-hmm. Fantastic man. I sat there and listened to him. We had 16 CEOs, or 16 people, 8 CEOs in the room. He does this once a year. And he's like, so what do you, you're kind of waiting, because I was like let all them ask their questions, and then I won't waste my question. And I'm like, how did you not screw up your kids? And he's like, literally, that's your question? I'm like, yeah, how did you not screw up your kids? Like, you've got all this money, all this wealth. And he told this amazing story, how he fell down and got back up and fell down and shared all those life experiences with these kids, which I felt like I had been doing as well. And he asked, well, what is it you feel guilty about? Like, he had seen this in me in this conversation.
Yeah.
I go, honestly, I feel like I don't do enough. And he goes, so God gave you this gift to try to do with. He goes, so how are you going to do even more? And I'm like, well, I need to go make more money so I can actually do more with it, right? And he's like, that's what you'll do. And I'm not exaggerating. Within a year, our business started to double, and and it's doubled again, and now it's doubled again this last year, which is crazy. It's just absolute blessing, and we get to do more with it. We get to actually do educational scholarships. We actually do get, we get to actually, the Mayor's Day of Giving is going to be a massive thing for us this year. And those moments, I get fulfillment, not because somebody goes, hey, thanks for doing this. I really don't care about that. What I care about is you watch a little kid get a toy or walk through, or more, I would even say this is as important, if not as important as those kids getting something, because kids can get anything. It's other adults participating in them getting the fulfillment in that and seeing that. And I think that that's what I get from being mayor, as an example. Not everybody's going to agree with every single decision I make, and I'm totally fine with that. I legitimately totally fine.
It's an ugly business.
It changes your mindset about humanity in a lot of ways. Like, it really does. Like, I've been called stuff, seen stuff. Like,
well,
it's crazy to me.
Because just to get on that point, to a small degree, people that listen to my show for a short amount of time, love me or hate me, think they know me.
Yeah.
And the ones that love you, you want to say to them, you don't know what you don't know. Yep. And the same is true the other way around. But to have people judge you based on what they think your mind is.
Totally. Happens all the time. Like,
you know?
It is so I ran on a specific set of principles, right? Those principles are my conservative values, even though I'm clearly a conservative. My conservative values allows me to drive revenue and use the skill set, right? David Green made this comment to me. He's like, God gave you the ability to make money. Like, he didn't give you the ability to go do this. He gave you the ability to do this. So be successful and be unapologetic. I'm unapologetic for being successful because I've earned it. I've driven it, right? What I have to do, my responsibility with that, though, is to actually do more with it. And my challenge was watching a city not necessarily take the opportunity to realize its full potential, which I really felt we could as a city. And not only as a city, but also change the state. I think that what we've just accomplished with our city staff, I heard Doug Ducey's I kind of cheated, right? I heard Doug Ducey's former COO, Chief Operating Officer of the state of Arizona. I heard the head of Child Protective Services, a guy named Mike Faust, who's a superstar. Yep. I call him my samurai. We have a guy named Kevin Burke. We've got Travis Cut. We have such a dynamic city management and staff. We hired a brand new police chief that has changed the culture of this service-driven mentality inside the city, and we have great firefighters, fire chiefs. So we have really tried to drive the culture of that. I would dare to say I took the tier culture and added that to the city of Peoria, right? And that mindset has allowed us to do more with it for people. Not everybody's going to get that, right? People are like, oh, business has nothing to do with the city. I'll tell you what, it is to me, it's the biggest nonprofit. We have a $1.2 billion budget this last year. How do I do more with it? How do I drive more revenue? How do I make a bigger impact on the greater amount of people? Just because I'm a conservative doesn't mean I think my job is nonpartisan. My job is to think about how I take care of everybody. I don't personally care if it's a D or an I or an R when it comes to making and taking care of people. My job is to make sure that I do the most with it. It just is a matter of how I actually do the business side of it to how I actually drive that revenue. And that's what gives investor confidence. That's what gives, when I go meet with a developer, Vestar, right? As an example, Dave Larcher is one of the nicest guys in our industry and in the state. Built some amazing products. He's really, really clean. Like, he's got a very tier-esque mentality when it comes to product and stuff that he puts out. And the guy's an absolute superstar. I want that guy to do business in the city of Peoria, and he is, right? He wasn't going to continue to do that. And if you ask him and you go down that path, there's a reason, because we've given, as a city, we've changed the mentality of how we do business. And then same thing with Amcor. Amcor is not just one piece of the puzzle. I had this conversation very early on with the head leadership of TSMC, and they were like, well, we already have our location. I go, no. I want all of your subcontractors. I'm like, I want anybody and everybody that I could actually to understand that we're open for business and we're going to make the state land deal. This is before I was even elected, that we make the state land deal happen. And once we get this done, we want everybody. We want to empower the future of the city, because when we drive revenue like that, it allows us to make sure that we have amazing public safety, which we do, but it costs money to do that.
Sure, it does.
Fire stations are $30 million a piece. Every single time you add a police officer, you're talking about $180,000 a year with fully impacted.
Fire trucks aren't cheap.
They're not cheap, and it takes 18 to 24 months to get a fire truck. So we have a full service, ambulance system inside the city of Peoria. The training that you've got to put into firefighters, and then look at our trash. You look at our trash trucks and our solid waste program that we have. We have an amazing solid waste program. We've got amazing AFSCME employees and the employees that are there. It costs money, and what has amazed me is people almost want to vilify you for wanting to be successful, or the city to be financially successful. We haven't raised taxes. We have fees just like everybody else, but we haven't raised taxes. We have one of the lowest food taxes in the state. We're at 1.6%. I mean, it's been an interesting course, and because of that, I've gotten to work with some amazing politicians all over the state. We have some really great West Valley legislators that I've gotten to work with, and I've worked with legislators all over. I spent a lot of time down at the legislature this last year and got to negotiate or help negotiate a lot of deals throughout that process. And I think that business mentality instead of an emotional mentality, because I'm not emotional about it. It's the business of the city. That's the way it works. We all have our wants and needs, but I think all those things from me growing up the way that I grew up all the way through, I think what ends up happening is people understand that, for me, I get along better than with the person that's on the street. That's the person that would classify themselves as poor or under the table, that wants to step up. I identify more as that person still, because that chip is still on my shoulder.
Yeah,
and it hopefully will always be there.
How do you balance? Let's to wrap this up. There's two questions. One of them is, how do you balance humility with confidence?
That's a great one.
Because you got to balance them.
Absolutely.
And I've wrestled my entire life with self-loathing.
Yep.
My not feeling good enough, but I used it as motivation to prove someone wrong. That's the chip on the shoulder.
Yeah.
So humility was never a problem for me. I never felt good enough.
Yeah.
I just was driven to prove people wrong. But how do you balance that? Because you are a very humble guy. You're a lot more confident than many people give you. I mean, you.
Yeah, I mean, I know what I'm doing.
You don't walk into a room without thinking.
No, I know I'm feeling it.
Right.
Yeah. I think that the difference is from a humble standpoint. I think you have to know who you are. In my industry, I deal with generals and heads of state all over the world, right? So I put body armor on everybody from Macron in France to every Trump family member, to former presidents, to John Ashcroft, who was the attorney general.
Of course.
He was the first person I ever put a vest on, right? I think you have to have a level of confidence in your ability to know who you are. In my industry, when it comes to body armor, there is nobody better than me. If you have somebody if it's a family member, trust me, you want me building your vest, because I've been in everybody else's factories. Nobody runs body armor like we do at TAR. And we are the best for a reason. I think part of my confidence comes from knowing who I am as a person. But at the same time, that being said, I know that I'm not the end all be all when it comes to above Christ. And I'm a hammer, not a scalpel. Right?
I get it.
So what I mean by that is when you walk in the shoes that I have walked in across this earth, and you go to Israel and you walk the path and you see all these, for me, my penance, even though I was not Catholic at the time, I still felt like I had to pay a penance, and I walked what was called Walking the Jesus Trail in 2017. My first time doing it was 2017. And I wanted to walk that trail because I wanted to experience the same footsteps that Christ had walked, and I wanted to experience this and really understand who I was. I was seeking for forgiveness, frankly, not only forgiveness for myself in a previous divorce, or forgiveness for my mother for not forgiving her fast enough. I mean, all those little things that you think about as a man. For me, that's who I was, right? And I think that when you look at things and you go and experience things like Streetlight, all you have to do is walk into a facility like that and have some little girl who speaks to you in the age that she was actually abused by, and it melts your heart, right? And then you start to look at, like, okay, I was put on this earth for a reason. I've got a skill set that can complement so many things. how do I walk into a room or have a capability of, like, anybody that walks I have people that say that they'll sometimes call me arrogant because of the way I run a city council meeting. It has nothing to do with arrogance. It's the business meeting. I have to run a business meeting. That's the way it is. And would you rather me be meek or even worse, weak? What we need is we need strong leaders that are actually going to be strong, but still have a heart for people. And I think that that's what we have. And a lot of it has to do with our culture around men, right? It's, we have to have this strength, and we can't show any weakness. What's wrong with showing weakness? You can still shed a tear. What's somebody going to say to me? Right? Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the wrong person to have that conversation
Yeah.
with. And I think that weakness, and being able to identify that, or if somebody what they would classify as weakness, to me, that can be our greatest strength if we actually utilize it the right way. That is where I think humility comes from. I think you have to look at how are you trying to do the greatest good for the most amount of people ever. And frankly, I mean, you're with a lot of politicians, you're with a lot of business people. We need more of it. Frankly.
We do.
And a lot of it is they will lift themselves up, thinking that they can't be. And what I would tell them is the opposite. The stronger the person, the stronger the leader could be by actually identifying those weaknesses is actually going to make them a stronger leader in that process. We all have a place on this earth. We all have places of where we should be. And the faster you can actually get to that capability in your life and understand who you are as a person, I happen to think it has to do with going and listens to. I've had people classify a lot of the sermons we listen to as TED Talks for life. I would say that's every week. Like it doesn't have to. You don't have to.
Do you listen to sermons online?
I'm there. I'm at CCV every Saturday.
Yeah.
But if I'm out of town,
I go to a place called Sonoran Chapel up in Anthem.
I've heard of that actually.
Yeah, they're great. It's a great church. It's growing. But it's, again, the community.
I'll even watch other churches. Like I've watched. I recently watched like a sermon from a buddy of mine sent me from Elevate, which is in North Carolina. And I will watch a sermon. I'm like, man, and I'll take notes and I'll journal it out and go, okay, not because it's like, hey, here's my Christ-driven notes. I got to go to my Bible. It's like, how does that identify with me and how I could actually be a better person?
There is a great pastor who's retired now, and I believe is he Scottish, I think, or Irish, but he lived in Northfield, Ohio, and he just retired. His name is Alistair Begg. You ever heard of him?
I have not.
Last name is Begg. Alistair Begg. Brilliant guy. I've been listening to him for years. And you're right. There are times when you listen to it, it's not like it's a religious experience, but the advice is so practical when you look at it.
Right.
If people looked at the advice as just practical advice, you wouldn't argue with it.
Yeah.
When it becomes a faith-based argument, now it's a faith-based argument.
Now they've got to fight.
But if you listen to the practicality of the advice, it's just genius.
There was I watched this sermon, it's going to sound crazy, but for us cowboys or us that have horses here in Arizona, and my wife and I have 6 of them. We own a ranch in Southwest Colorado. There's a church in the Denver area called Flatirons. And at least once every other month, they will have this cowboy pastor. His name's Todd, and he will literally have a horse in the circle.
I've seen him.
He's incredible. And I've shared this with special operations guys that I know all over the planet. Actually, I just sent this to a Dutch special operations guy, and he's like, "Man, that is the most meaningful thing I've ever heard." He goes, "Forget about the church piece," and it was literally like just this example of how he is with a horse and the problems that this horse is scared of. And then you address that as a man, and you're like, "Oh man, that makes total sense."
And how that horse responds to what you're giving off.
Incredible. So we can learn from everybody, and I think that more of us as leaders need to look at how do we. I'll go back to what Father Kiefer said to me when I was in 2nd grade. Right? How do we steal the best from every man that we meet, and we take those tools and we add those to ourselves?
Yep.
That is the greater sum of who we become, and I think that is that's still the lesson that I use today.
So the last question is about, maybe you've done this. You look at where you came from.
Right.
Have you had an opportunity to go and speak to kids that were in your situation? And if you haven't, what advice would you give someone that is in a what people would say disadvantaged situation?
Right.
Best piece of advice you'd give someone?
So I have had the opportunity to do this a number of times, not as much as I like, honestly. I think a lot of the system doesn't necessarily want you to tell these kids that they can actually be greater than they actually are, for whatever reason. I think that they are worried that they're going to try to go too fast, and maybe they are from that standpoint. For me, my best advice is realize that everything that you're going through right now today is the worst that it could possibly get. Everything else is up, right? So if you want a better life, if you want to get yourself out of poverty, there is always opportunities. The door closes as many times as it opens, right? All you're doing is for that next time for that door to open. We have a lot of chances or a lot of choices in life, and a lot of times we don't actually walk through the open doors that are in front of us. And and that means that sometimes it's taking a job that maybe only lasts 6 months. And that 6-month job, how much did you learn from that 6-month job, and then go to the next one? Yep. You were in contracting, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, I know.
And some people think that, well, this is what I'm going to do, especially when you're 21, 22. I mean, I was in the same, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. No, that's not the case, right? I found my career path when I was 26. It wasn't when I was 18.
I changed careers at 38.
I mean, look at you now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is the. Did you ever think growing up that this is the world that you're going to be in? I mean, podcast didn't exist,
ever.
Right? So you start to go down that path, and I tell my kids the same thing. The other thing is you need to look at, again, nothing's Bible, but this is my true belief. When it comes to the situation of foster care, you need to look at it as your secret weapon. And our kids look at it as their biggest crutch. They look at it as, woe is me. I'm sorry that I'm in the system. I can't believe how I've grown up. Stop all that stuff. Nobody's crying for you anymore. What ends up has to happen is there is multiple hands to help you lift up. It is your choice to actually take that next step. And when you take that next step, there's going to be somebody else to help you take that next step. That is how life works. The difference is identifying who is going to be your greatest asset to help you improve your life. And then realize that the worst scenario that you've ever been in, it does not matter what it is, that is going to be your greatest strength if you allow it to. That we so much hold on to all this pain and resentment towards somebody else that we forget about, like, hey, I want to go enjoy my life, right? For me, my dream since I was a little kid was to own a ranch. My wife and I recently bought a ranch up in Colorado. It was actually the original John Wayne True Grit Ranch from the 1969 movie. Can't make it up, right? Literally have the Mattie Ross house still on it where the movie was filmed and everything else like that. And it took me 20 years to get to that dream, right? It was not an overnight thing. We look at our phones and think that it's got to be instant gratification.
Right.
And as kids that are in the system, or kids that maybe not even in foster care, maybe they just are down and out. Maybe their parents don't have the ability to help them with their educational system. Stop thinking that that's going to be your crutch. Look at it as your biggest strength. Look at it as there is nowhere else but up. Right? I started in a storage unit. I'm not kidding you. Out of 51 kids, I graduated 51, right? I scored multiple times 16 on my ACTs, right? I was not and I literally think I just went down the B's and the C's one or two times, right?
When in doubt, pick C.
Yeah, exactly. I did not have a family or my mother that cared about my education, right? We're different with our children, but I did not have anybody that focused on that. That might be your greatest weakness. Okay, learn. Right? Steal knowledge from somebody else. They have more capability and more, assets now than we ever had, when it comes to, and forget this AI stuff. Everybody wants to lean on, well, I'm going to go ask the question. Go do the research and find it for yourself. Like use your brain, use your mind, be creative. To me, that's our greatest weapon. We just don't use it that way.
It's great to get to know you more. Yeah. I appreciate you sitting down with us. Yeah. It's an amazing story, and I know that there's so much more we could talk about, but I appreciate the time today.
Thanks.
It's great to talk with you.
Yeah, awesome.
Jason Beck, you got to learn more about him. Listen, we do Amazing Arizonans. This is stories from right here in the Grand Canyon State. Check out the other episodes, and if there's somebody you think we should feature, let us know in an email. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Amazing Arizonans, presented by Resolution Copper. Tap the button in the middle to subscribe to KTAR News.